What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network and Fantasy Labs, and it is time for our annual NFL Breakout Candidates episode in fantasy. Joining me today and returning to the show, one of our guys, Action alum, much more than a friend of the podcast, but just a beloved NFL expert across the industry. He's over at Fantasy Life, Mr. Matthew Freedman. Freedman, what's going on?
Just we're like, what is it, like 30 days now or something from like the start of the season? I mean, well, it's not quite 30 days, but it's approaching. I'm really starting to get excited about it. Like all of the industry drafts are really starting to kick into gear. We're just a week away from August. And so it's like the Hall of Fame game is like knocking on the door. And Chris, like, I think you like betting on preseason games. I'm probably going to be betting / burning some of my money on preseason games. So like I'm excited that the season is here. And just like I can't believe like it's been a decade now that I've been fortunate enough to do this as a full-time gig. And just still can't believe that somehow I'm still able to do it. So just thankful that the season is here and just ready for the grind.
Oh yeah, nah, I feel you. You got to bet some preseason when you spend all off season trying to project like these fifth and sixth wide receivers who probably aren't going to make the team, and it's like
Right.
the only time to really profit off that research is preseason. So for this episode, though, we're going to go through our breakout candidates. We'll have 5 each, and before we dive in for 2025, did some digging, went back to last year. So I just want to look at the guys we highlighted, see how he did. Freedman, you had Jaden Daniels, Bijan Robinson, Dalton Kincaid, Xavier Worthy, and Tank Dell. So not very bad at all. 3 out of 5, some big hits in there. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Jaden Daniels nailed it. Felt great about that one. I wanted Daniels everywhere in Dynasty, in redraft, in the betting markets, with the over on his rushing yardage prop for the season, the over on passing yardage, betting on him to win Rookie of the Year. I was pretty much as invested in Jaden Daniels as anyone could be, and that paid off. And then the Bijan Robinson one, I felt even weird mentioning that last year of like, does this even count as a breakout? But it was like, no, I think he's going to be like, maybe the best running back in the league this upcoming year. And he got pretty darn close to it last year. So felt good about that call. Dalton Kincaid, I was just wrong. What can I say? I was wrong. Got there in the end a little bit on Xavier Worthy, not quite the breakout I'd hoped for, but a good rookie season. And then Tank Dell, just what could have been if not for the injuries, but felt good about how I read those situations last year, and feel good about the guys I'm going to talk about today this year. But who are the guys you talked about last year?
So this is why you pick a guy like Bijan Robinson, because look at the running backs I had. Where is it? Zamir White, Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, Braylon Allen. This is why you pick a guy like Bijan Robinson. So whiffed on all those guys. But then, had Anthony Richardson, Rashid Shaheed, Marvin Harrison, Ladd McConkey. So, a lot of kind of up and down in those guys. Like Rashid got hurt. He was probably on his way. Harrison, I think he was disappointment. McConkey nailed it. And Richardson stayed healthy. He's still among the top guys in terms of top 4 finishes, but he's just all boom or bust. And I'm actually high on him this year, so we'll see. But definitely a better job by you, I think, than me last year. You had less. I complicated it with these shitty running backs, so I've learned my lesson for this year.
Look, I will say nailed it with McConkey. I remember being jealous of that pick last year that you got it in the outline. Totally agreed with that. Great call. And then I will say I thought about putting Braylon Allen on the list this year. So it's, maybe like the old fantasy douche axiom where if you just keep listing the same guys over and over, eventually one of them is going to have a good season, and then you'll look like you were right.
Yeah, it's just, I think with running backs and breakouts, it's a lot more chance based, right?
Yeah.
You're just looking for opportunity, and if a guy's kind of in position, there's still no guarantee that he gets there. So like we don't know. Like I remember Blake Corum, he finally got his opportunity. I think it was the last week of the season, and like he breaks his arm or something like that a few minutes into the game. So it's just that's the kind of season a running back can have.
Yeah.
But let's get into 2025. Excited about this. We'll start with your number one guy. I don't know. Are we going in order? I'm just kind of going, but if this is in order for you, let us know. But who you got first up?
Yeah, I love JJ McCarthy. I don't want to say I have the same Jaden Daniels feel about him, but I still basically want JJ McCarthy anywhere I can get him. So let's kind of start with like this situation. The situation is almost as good as any quarterback could have. I will say, I will freely say, I was very skeptical of head coach Kevin O'Connell when he was first hired by the Vikings. Basically, it was like what this guy has on his resume is that he stood next to Sean McVay while McVay was doing his thing. That seemed like the extent of like the greatness of Kevin O'Connell. But obviously, he has done tremendous work with quarterbacks since he has been with the Vikings. I'd say maybe the best that Kirk Cousins has ever looked has been with Kevin O'Connell. And then in that half season, when the Vikings were without Kirk Cousins, he still managed to keep that offense functioning at a pretty high level. And then, of course, last year, what he was able to do with Sam Darnold, who had a career year, and not just a career year, but sort of like an MVP adjacent type of year, where at least like he got some like mentions as like, oh, and we can't have the MVP conversation without at least mentioning Sam Bradford. It's not Sam Bradford, Sam Darnold.
Freudian slip.
yeah, he was at a Sam Bradford type of level for his career before being in Kevin O'Connell's system, and then now Kevin O'Connell really might have the best quarterback that he's had, or at least like his handpicked quarterback. And of course, there are all the offensive weapons: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones. Maybe the best quartet of skill player talent that a quarterback could have. And then I'd say, a top 8, top 10 offensive line. I think this is a really good situation for JJ McCarthy. Now, obviously, he missed all of last year with the knee injury, but he was still in the building. He could still pick up the offense and study it. So I don't want to say it's like he sort of had a, Patrick Mahomes like red shirt year, but he kind of has. And like we have seen a number of quarterbacks come into the league, sit for that first year, and then do pretty well immediately when they've come in. And some of these guys, it was kind of more than a year, but Aaron Rodgers comes to mind, but obviously Phillip Rivers, it happened with him. You can just sort of look at it and it's like, hey, when these guys sit, typically they don't come in and perform exactly like rookies. They perform at a level higher than that. And so then you just think about McCarthy, the draft pedigree, the athleticism. And I know he injured his knee, but he seems to be fully healthy, fully functional at this point. The dude wasn't like, oh, he's sneaky athletic. Like he was legit athletic. Had a 6.82 second 3-cone drill at the combine. Like that is legit mobility. The college production was there. 9.8 adjusted yards per attempt, 72.3% completion rate. I know he kind of gets dinged a little bit, or as a prospect, he got dinged because it was like, well, he's got all this talent around him and they don't really need him to sling it around the yard because Michigan is just winning by so many points. But when they needed him to throw the ball, he could do it with extreme efficiency. And he's got like a quote unquote like winning makeup. Like he won in college, he won in high school. He was a 5-star recruit entering college and he paid off. Like I think he has real tremendous upside. Now he doesn't have Jaden Daniels upside because he's not that kind of runner, but I think he's still sufficient enough as a scrambler to give you a little bit. And then I don't want to say like, oh, just one for one, he's going to do this year what Sam Darnold did last year. But like, I think he has a tremendously high ceiling and he's going after a lot of other guys in ADP. So like, I think he's readily available late in drafts, but he has a ceiling that's comparable to the guys who are going like 2 to 5 rounds ahead of him. So JJ McCarthy for me is a guy that I want in almost like, I don't want to say all of my leagues because you never go full McCarthy, but like I want as much exposure to him as I can reasonably get.
Yeah, and if you're playing best ball and stuff like that, you want him now because I think part of the equation with these quarterbacks is the average draft position. It's after those top few guys, everyone kind of has a similar range of outcomes. And so you mentioned it. You can get a guy like this, McCarthy, 2 to 5 rounds after you can get some other guys who realistically have the same range of outcomes. So if McCarthy goes to QB 10, QB 8, then it's, then it becomes a different equation. So totally agree. And I think for my guy, just sub in a shoulder for McCarthy's injury, and you got the same guy because it's Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen, another guy who stood next to McVay for a year, and we didn't really know what was going on with him. And I was really impressed with what he came in and did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. And Lawrence has a lot of similarities to Baker Mayfield, who Cohen really took to the next level a season ago. The Bucs went from 20.5 points to 29.5 points. Mayfield set career highs in passing yardage, touchdowns, and even rushing yardage. Just a much different player than he had been even the year before. So I think Lawrence is another guy going in that same range as McCarthy. We know he has the draft pedigree. We know he has the talent. We know he's been around some god-awful coaching at times in his, maybe all the time in his career, because he started with Urban Meyer. Then you had the post Super Bowl, post tank for Jalen Hurts, or whatever it was, seasons for Peterson and Press Taylor. And I mean, it was just a joke in the Jaguars coaching room. So I think Lawrence, if you like the moves that they're making, if you think Hunter is going to be a good player, if you think BTJ is one of the top receivers in the league, which I do, then I think you have to like Trevor Lawrence, because he's almost in a situation where it's going to be hard for him not to be at the top end of that, kind of QB2 tier. I think if not all the way up there into, the top 8, top 6, like Mayfield was, who finished third last year. That was impressive considering, Mayfield is not a running quarterback. Mayfield did it all on, mostly throwing with a little bit of running mixed in yardage wise, but he's not like a guy that's looking to take off, that's getting runs called for him. And I think Lawrence is the same kind of guy. I think the receiving core is so much better. And remember, Lawrence didn't play a full season last year, so we haven't even seen him with a full season of BTJ. Now you get BTJ and Hunter, and then, Tuten at running back. The O-line, I think, is something that Lawrence, they've always struggled with in Jacksonville. Liam Cohen, massive impact on the offensive line in Tampa Bay, both pass protection and especially run blocking. So I think Lawrence is just set up in a very similar situation to McCarthy, except with Lawrence, it's like he has these, years under his belt of just meh, and he's just been like a very underwhelming player, as has Baker Mayfield. So I see the similarities. I want to get ahead of this. So another guy I've been just kind of scooping up everywhere. I love how, if you get a little news, it's like, oh, everyone's kind of hanging on it. Like, is his shoulder okay? Is this, is that? But I don't even think Lawrence has been healthy at least much of last year. So I really like him to break out. And another one of these guys that's probably benefiting from a coach that stood next to McVay for a while.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about Liam Cohen? Because I know that you do really great season-long protections. Sean Kerner does the same thing. And so you guys like really kind of dive into offensive play caller tendencies and kind of like the history of what these guys have done at other places. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on Cohen for a little bit. Cause like I would say like I'm cautiously optimistic about Cohen, because part of it is like I wasn't really that impressed with what he did at any place before Tampa Bay. And part of it is like, you have to evaluate what he did in college at Kentucky as the offensive coordinator. It's like, well, how much does that really mean anything? And then the one year he was the offensive coordinator for the Rams, they didn't have that good of a season, but there were injuries and he wasn't really the play caller anyway. So it's just kind of like we're basing our enthusiasm for him on one season with the Buccaneers, really. And part of it is like, I think he does some of the things that good offensive play callers do in terms of, like alignments and motion and things like that. But it really is still one season. And part of it is like, well, Baker Mayfield had a great year. And maybe he's just sort of building on the year before. There are other great receivers there. Like maybe some of it has to do with the players and not as much Liam Cohen. But what are your thoughts on him?
So, and so the more you look back on him, even at Kentucky, you understand like he was great pretty much everywhere he went, except I think that season with the Rams was probably the outlier because everyone got injured and he's not the play caller. Yeah. So, but the thing about it is what you want is like, there's not many secrets in the NFL. There's not many places you can find value. A lot of times it's all concentrated And a lot of times it does come from a similar tree. So a few of the things Cone does is, number one, he can get your scheme throws, like, easy completions, guys in space, guys open quickly. If you look at Lawrence, he was bottom 4 in yards after the catch, for his receivers per completion last year. Baker Mayfield jumped almost a full yard and into the top 10 last year. Same thing on throws in under 2.5 seconds. Those are those schemed up throws where quarterback just getting his hands out. It's kind of a predetermined throw. Lawrence was near the bottom of the league in yards per attempt in those throws. When you look at what they did in Tampa Bay, Mayfield near the top of the league and took a jump from the year before with Canales. So things like that. And then you look at even the run game, which I'll talk about a little more later, but the O-line, Tampa Bay, last couple of years before Cone came there, bottom 2 in rushing, just some of the worst offensive line play, especially running the ball. And he gets there, the same tackles, one of the same interior linemen, a rookie center, and they turn into a top 6 team in terms of, blocking, yards before contact, things like that. So he just had his schemes, the way he's, kind of getting the buy-in on the line. He just kind of knows how to do these things. And then the red zone, I think, is big too, because Lawrence, that's really one of the issues he's had in his career. If you look at his yardage metrics, they're all around league average, yards per attempt, things like that. But then you say, okay, well, why hasn't he broken out? Part of it, 20% red zone conversion rate. That's near, the average is around 25%. So that's really bad, especially when you have a larger sample size. Mayfield took a massive jump even from Canales. I think he was at 37% in the year under Cone. And if you look at a guy like, let's say, Jalen McMillan, wide receiver for the Bucs last year, if you look at a lot of his biggest plays, a lot of his touchdowns, they were just brilliantly schemed up plays, and which is why I know you're going to talk about a guy later who probably ends up usurping McMillan as a rookie. So I just think that all these places where you can kind of look at the specific situations in which there were in which a play caller can help a quarterback and can impact the numbers. You've seen that with Cone, and especially with Mayfield, who I think the talent level is similar to Warren to Trevor Lawrence. So that's why I'm optimistic. And to your point on just Kevin O'Connell and standing next to McVay, I saw this little tidbit somewhere. I don't know how much of an impact it has, but I'm starting to think it has more than maybe people know. I think it was Cone who mentioned that a few years ago, somebody got a hold of like a Bill Belichick like handbook of some sort that kind of had all these detailed notes about how to beat all these different defenses and offenses, and all the coaches in like that McVay tree essentially kind of passed it around. And this was right around the time where Belichick like got awful and ended up like leaving the league. And then that's when McVay and I mean McVay's tree started really blowing up with all these guys. Like O'Connell started branching out. So I wonder if that's just something that it really is more of a thing that even we're kind of letting on with these guys, because they do seem to be a step ahead. But yeah, those are the things. I think situational football, play calling is big for Cone.
Okay, thanks for that. It's a great explanation there.
All right, number 2, who you got?
All right, Marvin Mims. I will say that there's a history, and it's maybe kind of scattered history of returners who were really good going on to become good players at other positions. Like Antonio Brown started out as a returner in the league. Wes Welker was one of the best returners in the league before he became a really good pass catcher for the Patriots. Tyreek Hill, right? I mean, obviously, like Hill's talented on another level, but like he broke out first as a returner and then got more action. And I would say like the poster child for this is Cordarrelle Patterson, who is like, maybe like Hall of Fame level caliber of return man. And then who finally got some production elsewhere on the field later in his career. I think Marvin Mims could kind of be in that vein. He's like a first team all-pro returner, like legit one of the best return men in the league. So he's clearly talented. And then I think he has the position this year to potentially overtake Courtland Sutton, who is about to be 30 years old. You just kind of look at the depth chart for the Broncos, and I'm relatively underwhelmed by what they have there at the wide receiver position. You have Devon Vele, Pat Bryant, who I think was a severely overdrafted third rounder, Troy Franklin, who was a fourth rounder last year, Trent Sherfield, that depth chart is open. And if if Sutton regresses a little bit and Mims takes a step forward, like he could legit be the number one wide receiver in that offense. He's got second round draft capital, 10.4 yards per target for his career, 22 carries in his 2 NFL seasons. So like they do use him in a little bit of that quote unquote Joker way where like he does get opportunities all over the field. I mean, he's just like, if you had to ask me, Matt, what one player on the Broncos do you want to draft this year? He would probably be the guy. And I just think he's available so late in drafts. But like Sean Payton, you also look like sometimes he's just had these like number 2 receivers who come out of nowhere to have pretty big seasons. Like you could see that sometimes with the Saints. I think you could see that this year, especially because like as good as Cortland Sutton's career has been, I mean, I'm thinking we're nearing the point where like it could just go at any day now. And Mims feels like the next candidate. If someone had to be the number 1 wide receiver on that team besides Sutton, who would it be? I think it's Mims.
Yeah, I like Mims as a player. My thing is with Mims is his range of outcomes is massive. But I think regardless of where it is, I think he's talented enough to return value on this ADP, but I don't think it's going to be at all because of Sutton. I think Sutton is locked in as the best receiver on that team. I don't think he really slowed down at all. I think he had one of his best seasons last year. And knowing Sean Payton, look at the guys that were playing. Zayway last year. Look who he drafted, Pat Bryant. Sean Payton wants these big hulking dudes at wide receiver for whatever reason. But the thing about Mims gave him no choice but to play him everywhere last year because he wants that. He's an explosive guy, and that's really what the Broncos were lacking last year. And I think this year, what I could see happening is I could see a lot more of that Cordell Patterson type of year happening where Mims mixes in at wide receiver, maybe only the same amount that he does last year, but also gets a ton more carries in the backfield because if I'm looking at it, what I'm hearing is the starters, the players that are running with the starters, at least early in camp, were Sutton, Pat Bryant, and Franklin, or sometimes it'll kind of switch up, but like you can see the bigger guys that like Sean Payton wants. So I'm like, well, why isn't Mims running with the starters? But then I think about it and I'm like, well, they got a rookie at running back and they got J.K. Dobbins who took forever to get signed. So I think you actually might see Mims as a lot more of that guy who just moves around and it's more of like a Taysom Hill Cordell Patterson situation than a straight up number 1 wide receiver situation. Cause I get the sense that Peyton doesn't really want Mims as like a number 1 receiver. Cause that's probably he's not going to beat, I think, press coverage manned up, consistently, but he can be a guy that if you play off coverage on him, if you can move him around at the line, he's going to win more times than not. So I think that's his path, but I agree with you. I think the upside compared to his draft capital was crazy. And he was a guy that was really slept on last year, even, weekly during the end of the year where he was like busting out for 100 yards almost, or like some big play almost every week.
Yeah, he closed the season on a high note for sure. Yeah. Who's your number 2 here?
I got Colston Loveland as my number 2 guy, the tight end for the Chicago Bears, rookie. It seems kind of like a crowded depth chart a little. Some people are concerned with Cole Kmet here. I'm not concerned with any of these things. My thing, again, is there's a very short list of kind of game-changing circumstantial situations around the league, especially, and it's you either have a quarterback, you either have a situation that's great, or you have like a coach of some sort who's, kind of shown in the past that he's willing to put you in this kind of position. And I think for Loveland, he has that coach in Ben Johnson, who Sam Laporta, as a rookie, broke out, essentially an every down player who put up, kind of record breaking numbers for a tight end at that time. And then Brock Bowers came and destroyed those. But we know that Ben Johnson is willing to play a rookie tight end. All the stuff about rookie tight ends, and it takes a while. I mean, tight ends in general, it takes a while for them to break out. That you can throw that in the garbage because the NFL completely changed. Most of these tight ends nowadays are blocking a lot less, both in the pass game and the run game, because the league just passes more. They try to get 5 out into the route more often. It's more about the quick game. So I'm not worried about Loveland. I'm not worried about him from the commit point of view because they were playing 10 on 11 last year. with Cole Kmet. I mean, he was the guy, he could walk through walls, you know what I mean, haunt people. He was just a complete ghost with Kaleb Williams. I don't Kaleb Williams just for some reason just did not throw to him. So I think Loveland is top three upside as a rookie, right behind Bowers, right behind Trey McBride. If you look at that list after those two guys, it gets really shaky really fast. You're betting on, a guy like George Kittle to keep it going as he continues to age in what sometimes is a run heavy offense. You're looking at Kelsey to keep it going. Mark Andrews was almost wholly relying on touchdowns. And there are a lot of guys, and there usually are a lot of guys that are bust candidates in that mid-range tight end one tier. And I think one of the guys who takes advantage of that is Loveland, who has the quarterback too. I mean, Kaleb Williams, I don't think he played up to his potential last year. So I look at, DJ Moore is a guy, number one receiver, yes, but not the greatest at beating coverage either, locked up one-on-one. You look at Rome Odunze, probably headed for a year two breakout, but he underwhelmed a little bit last year. And Luther Burden, another guy I like, but he's going to be a rookie this year. So I think Loveland is in the best position where he had that draft capital. They could have gone a lot of different ways. They could have gone with Warren, and they went with Loveland over him, which tells you that I think they want to play him every down. And I think I see that same kind of upside here for him. So love Loveland at tight end this year. I think he's going to be a cheat code.
I will say, if you look at the history of guys who have been 21 years old for their rookie seasons, at tight end specifically, that's like a list of basically like all Hall of Famers. Right? Like, there's like no surefire way of projecting guys to the NFL, but like Loveland, like with the draft capital, with what he did in college, and then especially with the age, it just feels like even if he doesn't hit year one, at some point he's going to be a really big star. And I think
Yeah.
you would just kind of want to be ahead of that for sure.
Yeah, that's the sense. I mean, it goes back to just like we talked about with quarterback, where it's when we're talking about breakout candidates, it's about where you finish too, and that is highly influenced by what your value is coming in terms of ADP. And I just think these guys, a lot of these guys we've talked about have a chance to be real fantasy difference makers in top guys at their positions, and there are all these kind of guys going ahead of them that are more likely to bust. So. Let's go to number 3 on your list, breakout candidates 2025, Matthew Freedman. Who you got?
All right. I am a simple dude, and I'm just basically going to be like, hey, I think Kaleb Johnson is the new Najee Harris. It's not like exactly that, but let's just look at Johnson as a prospect. There have been a lot of guys with really good size and like middling speed to enter the NFL. And like draft nicks always seem to, I wouldn't say like bash these guys, but they just lose enthusiasm about these guys. But it's like these guys turn into like James Conner, or like Jeremy Hill isn't like the best example, but like he was even still productive at the beginning of his career. Like there are guys who are big and fast enough, even if they're not all that fast, that can still have really good production in the NFL. And I think that's Kaleb Johnson. And last year at Iowa, 1,700 yards, 23 touchdowns in 12 games, just super productive, was an All-American. He's got the size, 6'1", 224, and he's got the sufficient draft capital, was taken in the third round to me, to make me believe that like he's probably going to be the lead back on this team. And, the Arthur Smith offense, I think they're going to be pretty run heavy. With Aaron Rodgers, I think they're going to be functional. Like, I'm not going to say like it's going to be a great offense, but like I think it will be good enough to support a strong running game. And then you look at Najee Harris and what he was able to do in 4 years. Like, never at any point did he have fewer than 250 carries in a season. Never did he have fewer than 1,200 yards from scrimmage. I'm not saying it's just as simple as like, well, we basically just take all of that production, all of those snaps and opportunities, and just give that to Johnson. But I think it's pretty close to that, because as much as I like Tyler Warren, like I don't
Jalen.
think he's sorry, Tyler Warren. Yes,
Sam
Jalen
Bradford?
Warren. Yes, as much as I like him, I don't think he's going to get the shot really to be the lead back there. I think he's always going to be like the supplemental change of pace receiving back. So I think that still leaves plenty of room for Kaleb Johnson really to emerge as the number one guy. And like, I think sort of like the base case is Najee Harris. Like, but like, what if he's just actually really good at football? And like people who watch the Big Ten, who watched Iowa for the past 3 years, they would say, you know what, Kaleb Johnson is just really good at football. So if he ends up kind of being like actually better than we would expect with the opportunities that he gets, then he could have like a massive, like, oh wait, this is like 1,500 yards, 1,600 yards, and like 12 touchdowns type of season. So Kaleb Johnson is someone I'm pretty enthusiastic about this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking of the Arthur Smith offense, and you say, okay, and then you kind of marry that with the Steelers offense, and you say, okay, the floor is probably Najee Harris, like you're saying. The ceiling, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry. I
Wow.
mean, remember Arthur Smith. I'm
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
rookie year
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, not
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, the great Hall of Famer, but just
Right.
Deion Lewis would be Jalen Warren in this case. It's like, okay, kind of reliable guy, but if this rookie's any good, it's only a matter of time. And it's clear that the Steelers kind of feel that way because they had other needs and not that many draft picks. And they went with Johnson with a premium pick on day 2, where a lot of people thought they might go quarterback or whatnot. So, and that just tells me that in general, I think the community might be a little underwhelmed on Johnson, but they drafted him for a specific purpose. They drafted him because he can run into stack boxes and break tackles. So I don't know what that tells them, but that tells you about how they feel about Rodgers and the rest of the offense. But because I think you would try to kind of not make the defense stack the box, but the fact that they're drafting a guy that's his kind of thing, I think that he's going to play a ton as a rookie, and I do think that he's going to be that Najee Harris for them in terms of usage.
Yeah. And you like another rookie here.
Oh yeah. Bhayshun Tuten, rookie running back, Jacksonville Jaguars. I love these situations that look so unclear, kind of heading into camp. And I think that's where you really find most of the value, because these days drafters are drafting teams. I mean, February, right after the Super Bowl, best ball kind of starts up again. And a lot of the rookie ADP is just so sharp. And what ends up happening is there are a couple guys that it's cloudy. And so people are kind of hesitant. And those are the situations that I think this time of year that you have to exploit. So for me, Tuten, his ceiling is a Bucky Irving-like type of usage. Bucky Irving was so good that I'm not going to say a Bucky Irving season, but usage-wise, I think he's there because Liam Cohen, our guy, last year, we saw them use all of their rookies right off the bat. And I think that's important when you talk about a guy whose main question mark is usage in what could be looks like a 3-way backfield right now with Bigsby and Etienne. So week 1 last year, Bucky Irving got double-digit touches. First 3 weeks, he averaged double-digit touches right off the bat. And you look at other rookies on that team, even we expected Trey Palmer to kind of build on his rookie year. He was a guy playing all the snaps. McMillan from week 1, 80% plus snap count. Even a guy like Cameron Johnson, like just a nobody out of nowhere. They found a bunch of snaps for him in September. So these rookies, when they make the team, which Tuten, I think, automatically is, given where they drafted him, he's going to have a role. And Cohen already has said this, he's our guy. He's the guy we're looking for explosiveness with. The offensive line, again, I want to remind people, went from bottom 2 with the same tackles, rookie center, and one of the other interior guys. So 3 of the same 5 and a rookie on the interior, to one of the best blocking lines in the game. So I think that Tuten is going to have that same kind of upside there. And people are going to worry about the other guys on the roster. I think if they go into the season with all 3 of those guys, I still think Tuten, his floor is the number 2 back, because after you traded all those picks for Hunter, to take Tuten to take him as a 4th round pick when you had a lot of other needs, tells me that they're trying to redo the offense in their image. The same reason you came and you let go of Gabe Davis, you signed Diami Brown for 1 year, $10 million, is like kind of a prove it deal. Like you let Ingram walk. Like there are so many things that tell you that this is how we want our offense. It's different from the previous regime, which I think puts Tuten in a massive position to produce right off the bat in year 1. And he's the guy with just the speed and the kind of, you don't need to talk about the speed, I think, in the sense that it goes into the draft capital, and it's kind of all kind of combined into one. But I think the important thing with his speed is that speed has become kind of a confirmation bias thing in the NFL these days, where when you draft a speed guy, you're going to give up things in other areas. Look at a guy like Xavier Worthy. But the important thing is you're going to get him on the field because he brings that speed. So I think one way or another, Tuten gets on the field and is at worst, going to end up producing what he drafted. But I think it's mostly ceiling for him at this AEP, which is outside the top 36.
Yeah, I mean, the team clearly drafted him with the ceiling in mind, and he has an athleticism that at this point Travis Etienne just doesn't have access to, and Tank Bigsby frankly never has had. So yeah, he's like a clear like swinging for a home run type of pick from the organization. And like they upgraded. I mean, I'm going to say it's an upgrade in the middle of their offensive line with the additions of Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCarthy. And so I think that, we should see that running game just naturally improve with those additions anyway. And then if there's any like the play calling magic that can be added from Liam Cohen, I think, Tuten, he certainly has the upside that I think we just don't see in Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, and everyone's waiting on running back anyway. So why not wait a little more? Because like everyone wants to just take complete like receiver in rounds like 3 through 6 now. It's the running backs they're all there still. So I don't even know whether you can call it zero RB when no one's taking RBs in the middle rounds in a lot of these drafts. So love kind of getting a guy like Tuten way down there after people have already kind of made their bets. But where are you going with your fourth breakout candidate for 2025, Freedman?
All right, I'm looking at wide receiver for the Buccaneers, Emeka Egbuka, rookie first rounder. And I will just say, in a typical season, if there's a guy who is a first round wide receiver who is as athletic as Egbuka is, 4.42 second 40-yard dash, and who was as productive in college as Egbuka was at Ohio State, normally that guy goes way earlier than Egbuka is going now in fantasy drafts. And it makes sense why Egbuka is going later. He's got to compete with Mike Evans. He's got to compete with Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan, who you mentioned too. I mean, obviously, Egbuka, we would assume, plays ahead of him, but McMillan is still a factor. He's still someone that you would think rotates in. He's going to an offense that I don't think this is really factored into his ADP, but just kind of thinking about like the negative case for Egbuka, he's going to an offense that is now like on his like fourth play caller in 4 years, right? Like there's not a lot of like continuity there. And then he's a rookie coming into camp who has to compete with all of these wide receivers. But I will say, Mike Evans is 32 years old. I would never want to say, hey, this is finally the year Evans doesn't get 1,000 yards receiving. But at some point, Evans is going to fall off. And at some point, Chris Godwin is going to fall off. And we're not even certain Godwin is going to be available for week 1 either. So that also factors into this. So if we assume that the Buccaneers offense is still going to be a pretty strong machine with Baker Mayfield there, then I think there's some room in here for Egbuka, even if he never overtakes Mike Evans as the number 1 wide receiver, still to carve out a lot of space as the number 2 wide receiver in a pretty strong passing offense. And you put that on top of the draft capital, the athleticism, the college production, it just makes me pretty enthusiastic about a guy who is going well outside of the wide receiver 3 range in the super majority of drafts. So really enthusiastic about him. And then if there is, some injury to Mike Evans, or Chris Godwin is out for longer than we would think, then I think there's all the more upside there. So Egbuka is a guy that I wouldn't say like he has the clear path to breaking out, but he has multiple outs for how a breakout could occur.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple of things that are key with him. And the first is that, McMillan, he probably overtakes him right away. I think that's key because if you look back at last year, one of the things I found and one of the things, reasons that I like Liam Cohen so much is because I thought his schemes were brilliant, and especially when it came to a guy like McMillan. But you also look at the Bucs, and you mentioned like they don't have much continuity among play callers. But they do have continuity. GM Jason Light, and he's done a great job of just kind of re-upping the talent, because remember, this is a team that bet everything on an older Tom Brady, 40 plus, got their Super Bowl ring, and they get to the playoffs every year. They do enough in this division to stay consistent. And I think it was great internal scouting to say, okay, Cohen left. We got this guy McMillan who put up, great stats for a rookie, looked like he broke out down the stretch, but he might not be the same player next year. So let's go and get a guy that, is better than this. And even if it costs us a first round pick, let's take a guy like Egbuka. And I think he gets a chance to play right away. And like you said, Godwin, we never know what's going on with his health, because now he's coming off another big injury. So yeah, like Egbuka a lot. And then just the draft community kind of, I think, weighing in too much too early about the situation in the depth chart, because by the end of camp, we could be in a situation where Egbuka is already the number 2, because Godwin's going to be out for a while, and McMillan, he's already jumped McMillan. So love it. I got a similar kind of guy, Matthew Golden, rookie for the Packers. And I think there's all the similar things at play as Egbuka, where it looks like a cloudy depth chart a little bit, and you don't know exactly where he's going to land. But I think from everything we've known from Green Bay as an organization, that Golden has a chance to be the number 1 receiver right off the bat as a rookie, because everything they've told us, when you look at LaFleur, who's always been successful with his offenses, this team did not like its receiving room last year. This team, and you had Jaden Reed. He was the supposed number 1 guy. You had his agent essentially say, oh yeah, he's still the number 1 after they drafted Golden and Savion Williams. But Jaden Reed, just 4.5 targets per game. That's crazy for a number 1, but that was because Green Bay just nerfed their pass volume all year. And that's because their other perimeter guy was Romeo Doubs. Then you had Dontavian Wicks, who runs good routes and nothing ever comes of it. So I think they really, and then Bo Melton, by the way, who's now a cornerback. So I think this team, once Love got banged up in week 1, once they started to really see what their receiving core was made of, they just kind of nerfed their pass volume. And people don't realize Jordan Love is top 5 in yards per attempt, top 5 in QBR. This guy can sling it. He's accurate. He doesn't get sacked. And now you have a receiver in Golden that can go down the field and kind of get open, and a little different from these other guys that they've had on the team. So I think Golden immediately slots in as a top 3 option. They've always played Wicks like 25 to 35% of the snaps, like a true number 4 when guys are healthy. Watson has been the only guy that they've been willing to kind of jump, and he can't stay healthy. So I think that Golden is right off the bat in a great spot, and another one of these number 1s where, because there's numbers from last year that kind of point toward maybe a pessimistic case based on the volume, based on the other usage for the other guys. People are kind of knocking him, but I look at a guy like Tet McMillan. I see a worse situation in Carolina, because they also have a bunch of wide receivers and a guy like an undrafted guy who jumped a bunch of top draft picks, and their quarterback has been a lot worse than Jordan Love has been over the first 2 years. So I love getting Golden and Egbuka, where they're going, outside the top 40 versus a guy like McMillan who still goes in the top 30.
Yeah, I think Matthew Golden is really intriguing. And to your point about the lack of opportunities that Jaden Reed got, I think Jaden Reed is a really good football player, but he hasn't gotten the opportunities to really cement that opinion. But the team did just draft a 1st-round wide receiver, which would make you think, given what they have seen out of Reed, that they maybe aren't sold that he actually has what it takes to be a true number 1 wide receiver, and maybe he's best as your supplementary wide receiver too. What is, I think, great about Golden is I think he really has the potential to play all over the field.
Yes.
So when they're in 3 wide receiver sets, if they want him in the slot, fine. That's probably going to be where Jaden Reed is most of the time. But what has prevented Reed from really being able to take that next step is that he almost never plays on the perimeter, whereas Golden can line up on the perimeter. And so when the team is in two tight end sets, Golden can still be on the field. And they run two tight end sets pretty frequently. So like that is what Golden has in his favor, to where he already kind of has, in theory, an edge over Jayden Reed, on top of the fact that the team just invested a first round pick in him. So I'm with you. I think Jordan Love is really underappreciated as a quarterback. And there's a scenario, and like I'm not projecting it as the base case, but if the Packers have to pass more than we expect, then it could just be like lights out for all of these guys in the
Yes.
offense, to where they just like they all explode. Golden explodes,
Reed.
Reed explodes, Tucker
Kraft.
Craft explodes. Right. But like I'm not projecting that. And I think like Raybon, I don't think you and Kerner are projecting that currently. Like they're probably a little more of a like a run balanced team. But if they get in a situation where they have to air it out more, then I think there's like that extra opportunity for Golden to break out. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's a great setup for Golden in Green Bay. And then like we haven't even really mentioned LaFleur, who I think he's not like quite in that Kevin O'Connell tier, but like he's pretty close to it. I think LaFleur is like very cleanly a top 8 play caller on offense,
Yes.
and maybe it's even top 4.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's why you got to buy. I think you have all the ingredients, and the real knock is that everyone's going to take the last year pass volume and weigh it a little too high, in my opinion, where there were kind of extenuating circumstances. But I think the time to gobble all these guys up is now, because to your point, Love, Reed, Golden, Crap, these are all guys that are kind of locked into certain roles in the offense, and they're being taken probably at their floors. Even if they like, there's going to be natural regression from last year. So even if you don't project them to have like this pass heavy season, they're still being treated as if they're going to go super run heavy and win, essentially win all their games except the ones against the Lions and Vikings or whatever it was last year. So yeah, I think it's a crazy situation when you have a quarterback that's been that efficient and a play caller that's been that efficient, and you can get both of his top receivers, all of his receivers outside the top 40. You can get his tight end outside the top 12. So yeah, it's a good spot. But let's close it out. Our last guy, number 5, breakout candidates for 2025, Matthew Freedman. Who we going with?
All right. This name is sort of in the Bijan Robinson mold from last year, where it's like this guy has already had something of a breakout, but I feel like there's room for a new career type of season. And I'm going with Jameson Williams, wide receiver for the Lions. So last year, he had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, 8 touchdowns, like a very solid season, but he had just 91 targets and only 11 carries. But he's just been so unbelievably efficient for his career. 9.8 yards per target, 8.7 yards per carry. What happens if the Lions need to give him the ball a little bit more? Now, I'm not going to say like, oh, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be overtaken or he's going to be injured, but like if something changes within that Lions offense where they need to pass the ball more, or Sam Laporta doesn't develop into like the guy that they think he will be, or if Jahmyr Gibbs gets injured or whatever it is, if something changes, then there's like the room for Jameson Williams to get more volume. And I think he could just absolutely dominate with it, given what we have seen. And like when he entered the NFL, obviously, he was injured. There have been issues with him, but when he entered the NFL, he was like I won't say he was a remedial wide receiver, but he was like a speedster. Like that was the thing that he relied on. But throughout his career, he has gotten gradually better as a route runner and as like an overall player. And so now it's the kind of thing to where it's like, yeah, he can make big plays down the field, but they can also use him in the intermediate and the short area. They can line him up all over the formation. So like he is more of a complete player now than he was when he entered the league and was a prospect. And then by the way, like I mean the dude was also a baller in college. It's not like he was a bad prospect either, and the team spent a first rounder on him. So he's got talent. He's with the limited opportunities he's gotten in the NFL, he has really flashed. And then now I think this could be the year where we see the volume. I'm not going to say he's going to get 150 targets or something like that, but like, what if this boost up to 120 targets? Like he has like 1,200, 1,400 yard like season within the range of outcomes with that kind of target volume. So He's someone that I'm enthusiastic about, especially also because he gets carries too. Like that's sort of like the Robert Woods thing from back in the day, where it's like, okay, game to game, it doesn't really mean that much, but it's like over the course of a season, if a guy ends up getting 15 carries and he's pretty efficient with those, like that ends up actually meaning something. Because guys like at the wide receiver position and they get carries, they also have enhanced odds of turning that carry into a touchdown and into long yards. So I think Jameson Williams is someone I'm not going to say like I'm expecting him to break out, but I see multiple paths for how he could build on what he did last season. So I'm enthusiastic about him and wanting to take him like ahead of his ADP just to make sure I get him.
Yeah, and full disclosure, when we did the outline for the show, I almost took Williams. He was going to be one of my guys as well. And the only thing I questioned was like, are people going to consider it a true breakout since he had 1,000 yards? But I totally agree. I think he's the guy that has more room to grow in that Lions offense, even if the offense takes a step back, or the team takes a step back, I should say, with a much harder schedule, with a lot of their offensive brain trust being replaced. I think Williams, they might just need him more, and the volume can kind of, like you said, overtake any efficiency losses, because this is a guy who was able to put up 1,000 yards on just 58 catches. The guy who is going to get extra work in the run game. And I think, if you look at ADP, I think the guy most at risk in this Lions offense is David Montgomery, because there's only so much that of offensive production that you can get out of this team, especially with I think is going to be a much harder schedule. And I think Williams would be the guy to benefit. He's more anti-fragile. Like no matter what, if they're even better somehow, Williams benefits. I think because then he's just, the pass game is better. If they are not as good, he gets more volume. Whereas Montgomery, he's got so many other things kind of working against him that I think, Williams is definitely a guy who one way or another should put up an even better season, barring injury. All right. I'll close it out with gotta go stay on brand, another Jaguar, Travis Hunter. He's kind of falling into that wide receiver 30-ish ADP now. I've seen him kind of dropping, and Freedman, you and I talked about him and said, there was a time when it was post-draft, and I think the outlook was almost too rosy for him. He was kind of inching toward wide receiver 20 in ADP, and there was just so much uncertainty. But the more I look at it, and especially now with him dropping a little more to a reasonable level, it's that you have to again look at the writing on the wall with a guy like Liam Cohen. Like, this is an offensive minded coach, and the Jaguars essentially mortgaged their draft to go out and select this guy. So what do you like? Do you really think that he's gonna give up anything on offense to go on defense? No, I think he's going to play as much as they need him to play on offense, which is almost every snap. And then he'll mix in on defense. But right now, there's no incentive to saying that he's going to be like a full-time offensive player or less than a full-time defensive player, because you want to keep opponents guessing. You want to come out in week one and, have that question mark. So I think that Hunter, with the uncertainty, it's become a thing where uncertainty is like generally just bad and people are kind of going away from it. But when you have upside to match that uncertainty, I think that's where you want to target it. And I think with Hunter, I mean, you're still talking about a guy drafted as a number 2 overall pick at a position where that means you're going to produce in year one. So I love it for him. I think he has a great partner on the other side in BTJ who can keep coverage off of him. And like, he's not going to get them. Usually you just have a horrible team when you're getting drafted number 2 overall. Whereas with this team, you have a quarterback who was selected number 1 overall in the past. You have what I think is a great coordinator or play caller. You have another wide receiver to take the pressure off of you across from you. So I think that he's just going to benefit from so many things that players typically in his, that get drafted where he does don't even benefit from. So if he, plays 75% of the snaps or something like that, I think he's still a big threat to crush his ADP, because he's going to be schemed up plays. And just look at what Cohen did for a guy like McMillan last year, where he was only featured for like half the year, and it was just touchdown after touchdown. So I think Hunter's just got so many paths where the upside is wide receiver 1 in year 1. And we saw it with a guy like Chris Godwin, even, where last year before he went down, he was putting up massive numbers alongside Mike Evans. And there was no real question mark there. and they were doing it with Baker Mayfield. I think you could see a similar situation this year. And this guy's just too talented to keep falling down draft boards like this. And it's just funny to me how I think, we've hit on most of these number one picks at wide receiver, whereas the guy that could actually do the worst is the guy being drafted the highest a lot of the times in Ted McMillan, who, again, I have no real problem with, but he probably has the most actual warning signs on the field when you look at everything, especially compared to where he's going. So give me some Travis Hunter all day.
Yeah. To your point about Tech McMillan, like he might not even end up being the number one wide receiver on his team. Like that could legit be Adam Thielen for like the third year in a row. But Travis Hunter, he's probably not going to be the number one wide receiver on his team either. That's probably still Brian Thomas Jr. But to your point, and I'm probably too low on Travis Hunter, and I'm like rethinking, like I need to go in and sort of tinker with projections a little bit so that like even to your point, even if he's not on the field as a like full-time player, even if it's just like in that 70-75% route rate, he could probably still have an elevated target rate because they're specifically like packaging him on the plays where it's like when he's on the field, we're going to get him the target volume that's sort of like commensurate with a full-time player. So yeah, he still has that within the range of outcomes. And man, it's like, here's the question. Do you think that they are going to give him like really the full-time treatment on offense and then have him just kind of rotate in on defense? Like, is that how you think they're going to do
I
it?
think that's the most likely outcome. I think
Yeah.
I think, does his snaps add up to more than 100? Like if you look at, offense plus defense, maybe. I mean, he did it in college, so it wouldn't be crazy to see him play more than any other NFL player pretty much ever has. Do they want to do that? I don't know, but I do know that they mortgaged their draft to take a guy with an offensive coach who, they let go of Davis, they let go of Ingram. Like there's all these other moves around it that tell me that this guy offense is going to be the priority. Like you really think Liam Cohen came here, got the GM fired, got his own guy in there, mortgaged the whole draft as an offensive guy to go and play this guy Hunter on a defense that if the defense needs Hunter, then is it really worth it anyway? Like, you know what I mean? If he's the make or break for the Jags defense, I don't think it's worth it to risk him that much on defense anyway. Whereas if the Jaguars can go and start scoring, 20, 26, 28 points a game, they're going to be able to win a lot of their games regardless of how bad their defense is. So I think that Hunter, I think they're playing it a little coy, but I think offense is going to be the priority for him regardless. But again, even if we're wrong, it's kind of a mix of both. We've seen in the past Cohen been able to scheme up these guys when they're on the field, and that's what they're going to be able to do, I think, because you look at the under 2.5 second throws, you look at the yards after the catch, the touchdown rate in the red zone, like all these things that Cohen's kind of been really good at. Hunter will benefit from, and I think there's becoming a lot less downside as he starts creep into those low 20s and high 30s in ADP.
Yeah, okay. You're selling me on this. Like when his ADP was in the 20s or like high 20s, like I was feeling like, no, I need to like if he's going to the number 20 wide receiver on the board, I need to take a pessimistic stand on this and just say that people are being ridiculous. Now that he's going as the wide receiver 30, I probably should pivot a little bit and be like, oh, there's upside. I mean, because there is the upside. And to your point about Gabe Davis being gone, Evan Ingram being gone, even if Brian Thomas eats, there could still be volume left over for Travis Hunter. And if this offense does what you think with Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence as your first breakout really does have that like, oh man, now we see why this guy was taken number one overall type of season, then yeah, Travis Hunter will definitely have the capability within that framework to go off. So yeah, I can see this. I'm going to make some adjustments to my projections.
All right. And there you have it. 2025 NFL breakout candidates. To recap: Freedman, JJ McCarthy, quarterback for the Vikings, Marvin Mims, wideout for the Broncos, running back Kaleb Johnson of Pittsburgh, wide receiver Emeka Egbuka of the Bucks, and wide receiver Jameson Williams of the Lions. I went with quarterback Trevor Lawrence of the Jags, tight end Colston Loveland. For the Bears, Bhayshun Tuten, running back for the Jags, Matthew Golden, rookie wide receiver for the Pack, and rookie wide receiver Travis Hunter of the Jags. that is going to do it on the Action Network podcast. Many thanks to my guy, Matthew Freedman. Freedman, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, on X at Matt F the Oracle, and then doing work at Fantasy Life with the fantastic team we have there. Ian Harditz, Dwayne McFarland, a lot of other people there, and we just recently relaunched the website. A lot of tools there that people can check out. At some point, I think the promo code is going to go live for Freedman. If you want to subscribe to Fantasy Life, you can use that promo code.
All right, there we have it. And of course, I'm on X at Chris Raybon and at the same handle on the free award-winning Action Network app. Also, be sure to check out the all-new Fantasy Labs app as well. And best of luck to everyone this NFL season. Let's get this money.